talk about how doing the sacrament or passing the sacrament to those who have needed it has really been a new experience for me. It's been fun, and I've felt the Spirit while doing it. And I know that it's something we all should do if we have enough people in our home to go out and help pass the sacrament to those who need it, if they want it, that is.
Great.
So I'm next.
Yep.
So I chose 2 Nephi 2:27, and on the card it says we are free to choose. And it says, wherefore men are free according to the flesh, and all things are given them which are expedient unto man, and they are free to choose liberty and eternal life through the great mediator of all men, or to choose captivity and death according to all the captivity and power of the devil. For he seeketh that all men might be miserable like unto himself. And I just like that because it's a great reminder that no matter the scenario we are in, we can still choose the light, because there's opposition in all things, especially in our choices. And I think that's helpful to be reminded of, especially at this time, because it's like so strange. And so, yeah, I say that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. We're doing well. We have more faces appearing than we normally do, and I'm very happy to see that. And thanks for being here. Thanks for being on time. Any questions or any announcements, anything to share with the class? Let's see. Okay. So please have your Book of Mormon, have your study journal. I want to ask you a question today. Yesterday we talked more about this doctrine that Alma is trying so hard to get us to understand about how the past plus the future equals the present. Bad past, incorrect idea of the future equals an unsuccessful present, right? We get these things right, we get this right. And there's one word I've been thinking about a lot yesterday after class and today is this word right here. Can you read that? First of all, maybe my handwriting isn't good, or maybe the screen's too small, I don't know. But responsibility. Think about that word for a second. Responsibility. Responsibilities. Responsible. What feelings does that word conjure up in you when you think about responsibility? How do you feel about that word? Positive, negative, neutral? Kind of like we talked about judgment like a couple of months ago. How do you feel about the word judgment, right? How do you feel about the word responsibility? What do you think? Levi and Ben and Charles, what do you think about responsibility? And everybody else too. I'm just calling people out.
For me,
Levi, Ben, Charles, in that order. Go ahead.
All right. So responsibility is kind of one of your key points of life, because without responsibility, you don't really ever do anything. So responsibility, it requires you to do something, and either you do that thing and you feel good and you accomplish what you were needing to accomplish, or you don't do it, and then life sucks because you know that you could have done it, and people know that you could have done it and you didn't, and so there's all that disappointment in you, and all around responsibility can be a good thing or a bad thing. It can either bless your life or destroy it depending on what you do. And I don't know how many of you guys were in the, yeah, I guess maybe only Charles was at the mutual we had the other day with the Winston Ward, but Brother Lucy, one of his favorite books, Way of Kings, I really like to, and a quote in there is that responsibility has a strange effect on men. Some people run from it, and some people need it. And so responsibility, some people just need that responsibility, and it can push you to do great things, and others will run for it. So responsibility is kind of important, kind of a big deal.
Fantastic. So even if you try to run from it, Levi, you know, two groups of people, those that run from it and those that embrace it or meet it, can you escape it?
No, it always catches up to you.
Ultimately, you can't, right? You can run, but you can't hide. You can run, but you can't hide. You can never go far enough away that it doesn't touch you. You can never hide deep enough that it won't find you. You can never run fast enough that it won't catch you. Okay, it's going to be part of our life. It all has to do with how we respond to it. Okay, I get what you're saying there. Ben, how do you feel about the word responsibility?
It can either be a good or bad. Usually it's like you're held to the consequences of that thing you're being held responsible for. So you either take care of it or you leave it alone, and deciding on what you do, you're responsible. You're put in charge of something, and you can either let it go or just do it.
Okay. Be good or bad, depending on how you face it, what you do with it. Fantastic. Charles.
I feel, well, kind of like Levi said, like some people run from it, some people need it. Like it can be a positive and negative thing. But I think in the end, if you take the responsibility, it'll be better for you and it'll be more positive. I mean, we all have a responsibility in this life that, like, we're all going to have things that we have to do.
Uh-huh.
And gosh, this is hard to explain.
That's why I asked the question.
Yeah.
It forces us to be like, huh.
Yeah. I feel positive about it. I like responsibility, and I think that it's a great way to grow. I think that without it, it would be very hard to learn and grow. And that it is essential for us. You know how you talked about like we don't think about like the future or the past, like it's just like the present, right? Well, the present doesn't have any like responsibility, because if you ever like for the future, like say I have a future responsibility for my family, right? Like I have to do good now so I can be great for them later. Like it's not something that comes naturally to people. Like it's uncomfortable for some people, and that's why it's hard, but it's how you're going to learn and grow in great ways.
Very well said.
Why do you like it though, if it's hard and uncomfortable?
Good question.
Well, I don't like this whole sitting around thing in quarantine, it sucks. I hate it a lot. I really wish that I could be in school or back at seminary and with people again. And there isn't a whole ton of like responsibility per se. I mean, sure, I've got like some online school stuff, but it's not like I'm responsible in representing the church every day when I go to school and how I act. And there's not, and also me as a person, I like a challenge and like the responsibility and having that. And it's kind of, and all, well, the reason I like it is because I'm looking out for my future self. That's why I am willing to go through the pain and it sucks, because I'm looking out for my future self, and that's what makes it worth it.
Yeah. So what is the fundamental difference between children and adults? Is like what makes you become, what makes a person mature, Ruby, mature, not mature. But she always makes fun of me for saying mature. Like what makes that transition between, like we'll say an immature adult or a mature kid, or that transition from a childhood to adulthood? Like what is the fundamental difference? Ability to bear responsibility for yourself and for others, is it not? Like children bear almost no responsibilities. And as you grow, your responsibility, the expectation upon you that you will bear responsibility for yourself increases. And as you continue to grow into adulthood, not only are you expected to bear responsibility for yourself, taking care of yourself, but if you do that well enough, then you might be lucky enough to take on some responsibility for a few others, like a spouse or even some children. Then you're doing really well if you're able to bear responsibility for even a small group of people, right? And then if you're doing well with that, then you start to bear more responsibility and look outward beyond that. How can I take care of what my neighbor or my community, or serve in my church community, my worship community? How can I bear responsibility for the whole world in a sense? How do I have responsibility for that? For people I don't know, for the poor and the needy, like, so that is the fundamental difference there. So one thing that I heard in your guys' comments, like you can't escape it. It is upon you, right? You can't run. The difference is, what do you do with it? So do you take it voluntarily, or does it feel like it's forced upon you uncomfortably? And so when you think about your future, are you like, yikes, ooh, responsibility, scary, like I don't want that. I don't want responsibility. Get it off my back, like, ooh, I don't want to grow up because that means I have to. That sounds a whole awful lot like work. Gross. Like, no, that's not fun. Bearing all this responsibility, like then it forces me, it limits me in what I can do, because I know that I have to make the choices that will be for my better future self, like Charles just said. And so if you bear that voluntarily, that responsibility, then it empowers you. And like Charles, like you like it. You want to rise to the occasion. It gives you growth. And like Levi said, in learning, right? But if you shirk from it, if you're like constantly trying to like avoid the responsibility, first of all, it won't work. You'll self-destruct. Then you're just trying to pass the responsibility for yourself onto the people around you continually, right? You never move out of your parents' basement, or like, until you're like 45 or whatever. Like that person has been like kind of not been given the opportunity to take responsibility for themselves. And that's what your parents are trying to do all the time, right? They're trying to give you responsibility. Are you taking it? They want to, but sometimes we're reluctant to take it. We don't want it. And sometimes that's where struggle happens in the home and between parents and kids. It's like, no, you need to bear more responsibility for yourself. Clean up your mess. Take care of your room. Wash your body well. Like, you know, do your chores and like be responsible. And we're like, no, I don't want to be responsible for myself or anybody else. Like, you take care of me. I'm just a big baby. I'm just a big kid, you know? So Chase, you had a hand up like 5 minutes ago. Go for it.
We're past that.
Oh, we are? Okay. Well, if it comes up, bring it up again. Any comments or any thoughts about this idea of responsibility? Because the future, I mean, when we talk about future, we're talking about that's what gives us responsibility, right? As soon as we realize that there's a future, then suddenly responsibility comes upon us for ourselves and for lots of other things. And that's can be scary and uncomfortable. Ruby, how do you feel about the future? How do you feel about responsibility? That was a good question you asked, Charles.
What makes me really scared about it is I feel stressed when I think about people asking me to do things I don't know how to do. So my folly is thinking that I'm not going to know how to do things, like limiting my future self, thinking that I can't learn how to pay taxes or pay rent or do stuff like that. But I will learn. So especially by strangers, being asked to do things I don't know how to do by strangers. Like, I can learn how to serve in my calling. It's uncomfortable to have to make a bunch of phone calls and talk to people, but like, I take it voluntarily and I do it, but it is out of my comfort zone.
Okay.
I don't love it, but I'm working on it.
Okay, good. So in a way, I get that uncomfortable feeling about the future can be because I'm comparing my present self to the future self that's going to have to do all this stuff, and I'm not there yet. And so that's scary. And so what we're discounting is the growth and the learning factor that comes as you take on responsibility. Something amazing happens. You become more capable. It's one of the laws of service. The more you do, the more you can do. It's like we're not limited. We're not stuck. We're not stagnant. Our brain has got this plasticity that it can grow. Like, I was just learning this morning about new synaptic connections in our brain. Like, our brain, so we can't grow unless there's a stimulus for it. Like, unless we're pressed to do something we don't know how to do, we won't become more capable. It takes an outside influence, a stressor or a need or a demand of some kind to force our brain to learn and to do something new. All right. So taking on responsibility voluntarily, first of all, we feel good. We feel better about it than if it's forced upon us, like a burden. Like, we face it, you know, and we're like, we take it. And then we can do something with it and we feel positive about it. And that creates a positive feeling on us. And then we learn and we grow and we progress, and that produces more positive feeling and more positive internal feedback. So the more we do, the more we learn, the more we grow. This is what we want as human beings. This is what our brain thrives on, is that kind of growth and challenge. If we don't take it on, we don't get challenged, we don't grow. We're stuck. We're damned. That's what damnation is. It's like we're stuck. We can't move beyond until we take responsibility. Hannah, was that a hand?
Yeah, I kind of like what's being said. And I, like, when Ruby talked, I was like, oh man, I agree so much. I don't know why, but doing hard things has been something that I've really struggled with in the past, and recently I've been a lot better about doing them. And it's kind of like being in a dodgeball game, I guess, kind of with you just on the one side, and everybody else has the balls, and you're like, okay. you're like, give me all you got, but you're like shaking in your boots. But you're still willing to take it on. And maybe, you know, they all start throwing their balls and you get hit by every single one, but maybe you just dodge one. And just that one that you dodge, you're like, oh yes, okay, I dodged that one. So you get up again and you're like, okay, give me all you got. and maybe you dodged 2 this time. And so I don't know, that's just kind of the feeling that I've had recently, is like, maybe, you know, kind of like you win some, you lose some, but overall it's the feeling that you get from actually accomplishing something that was really hard for you, is a lot better than the guilt and that horrible feeling that you get for running away, trying to run away from those things. So yeah, I just wanted to say that. Good comments, guys.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sort of, I mean, what we're speaking here is true. And like, is this the gospel of Jesus Christ that we're talking about here? Or is this just psychology? Is it just practical life?
They all go hand in hand, I think.
Yes, absolutely. The gospel is life. It is the pattern for life. Like, it is the truth, the true way. It explains everything. Like every good piece of science, every good piece of, you know, it all comes down and is taught in the gospel of Jesus Christ, because it is the practical and the true way to live. So it's all in there. And people see them as mutually exclusive, right? And they're not. We get it. Alma is so good at making the gospel very, very practical and useful to us. So like, yeah, well, so thinking about responsibility we have to our potential, okay? You, like who you are now, it's like, how useful are you? Like, what are you doing? Like, how much have you become? Like you're like, you're not good for much yet, right? But your potential self, what you're becoming, what you can become and what you can do is huge. There's no limit to the greatness of you. And there is that potential in front of you and in front of me every day. And what are we choosing to do with that? Are we shirking from it? Are we trying to hide from it? Are we denying that? So like, are we living up to our potential? We don't really like to hear that, right? It's like, oh, that's burden. You're telling me I'm not good enough or that I could do more. Well, yeah, you can. Like, yes, you can do more and you can be more. But you have to voluntarily take on that responsibility for yourself. Okay, we are free to choose. We have to create the future out of our potential by bearing responsibility for it. And that is the only way to be happy. You will never, the person who shirks that responsibility, who tries to run away, will never be happy, because that's not how we're built. They will never be satisfied in life. The only way to be happy is to take on responsibility voluntarily and make something of ourselves, and to make the world more a little like heaven and a little less like hell. Like, that's what we have to do. So any other comments about that? I encourage you to write a note in your journal about what your thoughts are and about this subject, because it kind of fires us up. It can fire us up a little bit or make us feel kind of freaked out, right? I felt freaked out by my future. I felt like I didn't want to take on some of the responsibilities of adulthood because it doesn't sound like fun. It sounds like a lot of work. Well, that's in your future. That's coming up, right? And so get on with it. Get on with growing up and get on with the good life, because that's where meaning is found. If you're not taking responsibility for yourself and your potential, then your life will feel empty and you'll have no meaning. You'll be depressed. You'll wonder, where's your value and where's your worth? If you wonder if you're like, well, I'm no good, like, I don't, like, I don't know. Like, it's because you're not taking your responsibility voluntarily and living up to it. Then you don't feel that value. You have to do that to have a life of meaning. So make a few notes about what you're thinking and feeling as regards to responsibility for your potential. Okay. Please. Here's something kind of scary. Where does this fit in? This will be a precursor. Okay. Turn to Alma 12, 5 and 6. And Ian, would you kindly read for us 5 and 6? Now think about how this teaching of Alma informs this discussion about the future, our future self and our potential. All right, as we're reading this, think about how this informs that conversation. 5 and 6, Alma 12, 5 and 6. Ian.
Okay. It says, now this is the plan of thine adversary, and he hath exercised his power in thee. Now I would that ye should remember that what I say unto thee, I say unto all. And behold, I say unto you all that this is the snare of the adversary, which he has laid to catch this people, that he might bring you under subjection unto him, and he might encircle you about with his chains, that he might chain you down to the everlasting destruction according to the power of his captivity.
Okay. What does this scripture have to do with you and your future and your potential?
I guess it's saying that, well, if we don't either take responsibility or something, we can get trapped by the devil.
Yeah, good. What does the devil want you to not do?
Take responsibility.
Absolutely. What does it say at the beginning of verse 5? There's a special important word right there.
Plan.
Yeah, plan. What does Satan know about you? And Ian, I'm not just asking you, I'm asking everybody. You're like, he keeps asking me questions. What does Satan know about you? Like,
Ian.
Your weaknesses.
yes, he does. He can see everything you do. So he knows where you are likely to fall. Will and Hannah, in that order.
I was going to say, he kind of knows everything we give him, right? Because Heavenly Father knows everything. Like, he knows our thoughts, our feelings, and Satan kind of just is able to watch us. He's like kind of closed out because Heavenly Father protects us from him. And so he just sits there and watches us until there's a moment where we're vulnerable and inviting him in. And he jumps like right in on the chance.
Mm-hmm. Good. Okay. Hannah.
Well, he is our spirit brother. So he was with us in the premortal life. So it's like if you think about like one of your siblings and you think about how much they might know about you, he probably knows even more.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like he knows us pretty well. He knows all of our weaknesses, our strengths. He knows everything, and through knowing everything, all of that, he's able to devise a plan, like it said in verse 5, that will do what it takes. He'll do anything it takes to stop our progression.
Mm-hmm.
and make us stuck.
Yeah, good. Absolutely. So Will says he knows everything that he can see. This is true. He's very good at observation. All right. But he knows more than he can see in terms of what you see in the mirror and what other human beings see. Right? Because human beings can't see beyond the skin. Right? They see outward appearance. Hannah brought it to another level and said, well, he knew us before we were here. So he has some back history on you and I that we don't even have. Right? He knew you before. And everything that you had learned and become or not become or whatever. See, we had choice from the moment, from the beginning, we had agency. It's not like agency started when we were born. We all use our agency in the premortal existence to become and to learn and to grow and take responsibility. And Satan's whole plan was no responsibility, no individual accountability. Reward without sacrifice. This was his plan, no responsibility. Got to remember that. So he knows you and how you did before, and he knows your potential. He knows what your future holds based on who you can become. And so he's using a lot of information against us that we don't even have. Here's the other thing. He is spirit, right? So he can see spirit. Not just physical, but he can see spiritual too. So every intention we have, whether I show you outwardly what I really want to be or do or say or sin or shirk or whatever, like he can see it because it has a spiritual impact on our light. Okay? Everything that we intend has an impact on us. So let's go over to 14. Alma 12:14. This was supposed to be like 2 minutes of this lesson. Okay. So Alma 12:14. Let's have a reader. Clara, let's hear your voice. Alma 12:14.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. For our words will condemn us. Yea, all our words will condemn us. We shall not be found spotless, and our thoughts will also condemn us. And in this awful state we shall not dare to look up to our God. And we will fain be glad if we could command the rocks and the mountains to fall upon us to hide us from his presence.
Okay. So the three things are words, our works, our thoughts, and our intentions, our desires. Okay? What we want, what we even think, what we intend has an impact on our spirituality. So what does this tell us about what Satan can see and know? He doesn't know your thoughts, but he can see the result of your thoughts on you spiritually. So while you may, let's say you really hate somebody, whatever. You may not actually do anything to act on that hatred, but that has an influence on you and on your soul and on your spirit, and Satan can observe that, okay, because he is spirit. So he's got a plan. He's working his plan. He is trying to destroy your future and mine. So that's why Christ said, watch and pray continually that you may come off conqueror, that you may not be tempted. Watch and pray continually, he said, because he knows what Satan can do. He knows that he's got a plan, that he's really, really good at trying to get us to avoid facing the past and the future, to avoid responsibility for our for the potential that we have. Okay. So we got to really be careful, essentially, right? We got to really be careful, because that plan led Jezreel into a big pit that caused him a whole lot of anguish, and we're going to learn about Jezreel maybe tomorrow. So here in chapter, any comments, anything you'd like to share or thoughts regarding this piece? I just wanted to bring that out. Okay. So, all right. Change gears. Okay. We are now into Alma's and Amulek's discourse about redemption. Okay. About redemption. Now, what is redemption? The word redeem. Who likes Chase? Well, how would you say is what does it mean to redeem? What is redemption?
When your actions are like an action that you took that wasn't right, that wasn't morally good, is fixed, you are redeemed. And maybe when people I'm not sure. I'm not sure. That's kind of a definition, but I know that there's more to it than
Okay,
just
so
that.
yeah, you're talking about something being put right or put back or made better, right? Kind of like I did a bad, and then that can be sort of fixed, and I can I can move on. Okay, to be redeemed. Any other ideas about redemption? Because it's the plan of redemption, right? And Amulek and Alma talk a lot about redemption. So, and there are two parts of that. So your redemption from the two monsters. The two monsters. There are two monsters that are talked about in Second Nephi and later in the Book of Mormon. So let's read. What are those two monsters? Maybe you can already tell me. Okay, Ruby?
Death and hell.
Yes, okay. The two monsters are death and hell. Second Nephi 9, death and hell and death are the two monsters. And so what kind of death are we talking about over here? Why is that physical or spiritual death over here on this side? Yeah, anybody? Hannah.
It's physical.
Okay, so this is physical death. Good. And sometimes looking at the future is kind of scary. When we look at the future, we have these two things always before us, do we not? Death and hell, or judgment, like this accountability. Now, I don't think I just want to talk about death here, but I want to talk about death and suffering. Okay, it's not just death that is in our future. It is that life is suffering. This is like a fundamental Buddhist foundation of belief. Is like the first principle of truth you need to know is life is suffering. And it's true. Like death and hell, death and suffering are hand in hand. And so what is redemption from death and suffering? How are we redeemed from death? Maybe this is obvious, so give me the obvious answer if you know it.
Resurrection.
Okay, good. So we're redeemed from death by resurrection. How are we redeemed from suffering? Because the ultimate end of suffering is just that you just die a painful death. You live a painful life and you die a painful death, right? So like, how is suffering handled by the atonement? Let's read a verse about this that I really like. Alma 7, 11 to 12. This is a doctrinal mastery, I believe. And let's have Bryson, let's see, Dallas. Dallas, could you read this? Alma 7, 11 through 12.
And he shall go forth, suffering pains and afflictions and temptations of every kind. And this that the word might be fulfilled, which saith he will take upon him the pains and the sicknesses of his people. And he will take upon him death, that he may loose the bands of death, which bind his people. And he will take upon him their infirmities, that his bowels may be filled with mercy, according to the flesh, that he may know according to the flesh how to succor his people according to their infirmities.
All right. So ultimately, all human suffering, physical suffering, is resolved in the resurrection. Okay, we are made whole again. We are restored in every way from every physical kind of suffering. But in real time, to get in throughout this life, there is also help or alleviation from the suffering. And how is that done? How is that made possible to us? What must we do to access the succor and the mercy of Christ, so that suffering is less painful? What do we need to do? Like, it's going to be painful. What is the answer to making it less painful?
To think about the future.
Okay, good. You can avoid some kind of pain by making better choices based on what you think will go well for you, right? Can you avoid all pain and all suffering? None of us can. So how do we access the strength or the release, the easing of the burden of suffering when we do experience it? Yes, we can avoid some, but then when we do experience it, what is available to us? How is it available to help? The answer is really easy. Hannah, go for it.
I think that we have to come unto Christ to actually make use of the atonement. And I guess another way is aligning our will with our Heavenly Father's. And I guess that will help us realize that any of the pain and suffering that we do experience is because, I guess, overall because of plans. And that, I guess, the knowledge that through those pains and experiences and tribulations and torment, we can progress and grow. And I think especially we can do that especially through making use of the atonement.
Okay. And that's really valuable what you just said. Understand the purpose in suffering. That's huge. Like, if you know the reason why or the value of the difficulty, it makes it easier to bear it, does it not? It's like to suffer pointlessly or aimlessly is just like impossible to endure. It's just like pointless suffering. But Hannah just taught us that the gospel gives us a framework for understanding the value of difficulty, that there's opposition in all things and we experience growth. Some things you can't learn without going through difficulty. And then the third thing, how do we access help or redemption from the suffering through the mercy and succor of Christ? Well, you said come unto Christ, which helps us, like Chase said, avoid needless suffering by making good choices. So we understand the purpose of suffering and we can ask for deliverance, ask for strength, and even deliverance now. Just like, do we have any examples in the Book of Mormon when that happened? Something come to mind when people were suffering with burdens and they got help? What comes to mind that we've learned about? whose burdens were made light, so they couldn't even feel them on their backs, where they cheerfully submitted to their taskmasters. Whose people was that? Will.
Alma's people.
That's Alma's people, right?
And
They were righteous. Well, they were not so righteous first. Then they repented with Alma's help. And then they were righteous, and then they went into captivity. To be refined. They had purpose in their suffering. The Lord was refining his people, and he helped them through it. They asked for strength and help, and he gave it to them. He lightened their burden miraculously. We get redemption from the suffering of life through the gospel of Jesus Christ because of the atonement of the Son of God, that he can actually visit us and help us to bear up the burdens that we have and to endure physical and emotional and social suffering. That's all part of this life. He has felt it. He can help us through it. I promise you that. You come to know Christ by going through suffering. And when you allow him to walk with you, then you know that he's there and that he's suffering right along with you. And you know him better because you know that he walked that path so that you wouldn't have to be alone. Okay, he voluntarily suffered your suffering so that he could help you through it. But you don't get to access that kind of peace just for free. You have to do what he asks you to do, and you have to call on his name. So if you're experiencing suffering in life, try to understand the purpose. First, try not to get more through your, life is hard enough. Don't make it harder by making dumb choices. Try to understand the purpose in your suffering and ask for strength to get through it. Now, this resurrection piece. What do we know about resurrection? Alma 12. Amulek teaches us about this. Actually, in Alma 11. We're going to pick up this lesson. Well, maybe we can finish up this portion of it with this sort of redemption from the two monsters, death and suffering being one of them. Let's read 41, 42, 43, and 44. Well, and 45. Okay, 41 to 45. It's kind of long. I don't know if we have all the time to do that. But these are scriptures on resurrection, okay? The doctrine of resurrection is taught. So what facts do we know about resurrection? As scan through those verses, scan through them, speed read them, and highlight facts about the resurrection. And then give me some of those facts. We'll write them down. So we're in Alma 11, 41 to 45. Okay. Let's have Bryson, Ben, Clara, and Janice each give us a fact or two about the resurrection that we learned from these verses. Bryson, Ben, Clara, Janice. Go ahead, Bryson.
The restoration that it's talking about, it says that it shall come to all, both young, old, bond and free, male and female, both the wicked and the righteous. There shall not be even so much as a hair of their heads should be that will be lost.
Okay.
So they'll be restored in perfect form.
Who will?
Everyone.
Everyone. Okay. We'll come to all, and we'll have a flawless body again. Okay. Good. Ben, another fact or two about resurrection.
Spirit and the body shall be reunited again in its perfect form. Both limb and joint shall be restored to its proper frame, even as we know now are at this time.
Okay. So even as we are now are at this time, I've done a lot of research on that, like trying to really, really understand what that means, even as we now are at this time. Read lots of, well, I've done a lot of research, and it'd be interesting to unpackage that together as a class. There is some speculation involved in what that means. We don't have the full revelation on exactly what that means, but it does mean it's your body, okay? Even as we are now, it means it's your body. It's not just a perfect, glorified, immortal body. It's like you. It's you. You'll know it. You'll be like, this is my body. You'll know it. So we'll say it's your body at least, okay? Now, your body's imperfect. So, more facts. Clara.
Some of us are going to be so ashamed we won't be able to look at God in the face. We're going to be unable to behold him in his perfect form because of our guilt at what we've done wrong.
Why is resurrection so often taught with the doctrine of Judgment Day? It's like, because that's what he's doing. He's combining the two events as though they are part and parcel. So it's prerequisite to judgment. And then how that judgment goes depends on how we've lived, right? Not all will feel that way, right, Clara? We hope. Like, not everybody will want to run and hide from God at Judgment Day. But it's a prerequisite to judgment anyway. We know that. Another factor too, Janice.
Once we're resurrected, our body and spirit will never be divided again, and we will see no more corruption.
Okay. Never die again and no more suffering. We'll say physical suffering or pain. Excellent. Okay, any other facts that I think are important to? No, I think you guys got all the important facts. So we're out of time. I think we understand the resurrection. It's a very straightforward doctrine. Okay, it's miraculous and it's a huge doctrine that's hard to get our mind around, but it's also very straightforward. Like, you die, you're raised again into a body that is immortal. You'll never die again. You won't feel any pain. Now, not everybody will be the same. Not everybody will have the same glory. That's an interesting thing to be aware of. It's not like we're all going to be shining bright angels, right? It's like the kind of body we get resurrected with is equal to the kind of glory that we are willing to receive. So there's not all the bodies will be the same. Okay, we'll leave that there. Thank you for your engagement today in the discussion. I hope it's been helpful. It's been enlivening for me and energizing because we've spoken about truth. As you've been sharing your thoughts, especially earlier on in the class, I felt the Spirit and I felt joy. I felt joy in knowing that you are understanding these concepts, that the truth that we're discussing here is like shaping your life. And that is what it's all about, is aligning ourselves with truth. And then we get to feel the joy and the unity that comes in trying our best to live according to the truth that we have. And I felt that today. So thank you for that. That is very encouraging, and it's very fun for me. It's the most fun thing in the world to me, is to feel that unity of living according to truth. So I leave that with you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. I had asked Dallas to say the closing prayer today, I believe. Thank you, Dallas.